you're really all here to see our other esteemed guest, which is Anne Widdecombe. But until Anne is on, I hope you'll make do with me. So it's lovely to be introduced as the Queen of Doge. Thank you very much. The other week I was called the Queen of Kent, which was very nice. I will answer to either, and the opposition referred to me as that bloody woman, which is... I'm annoying all the right people on a regular basis, so that makes me feel happy. So my... Thank you. So my journey from the Conservative Party to Reform started really on the 3rd of June 2024. It's a day that might resonate with some of you. That was the day a news flash came on my phone and said Nigel Farage is returning to frontline politics and he is returning to head up Reform UK. And it was a bit like a bolt of lightning had struck me. I just thought, oh wow, this changes everything. Now I know exactly where I was when I heard that announcement, as all momentous dates stick in your mind. I was in a car with the Tory MP for Southend because I was working for her. I was her head of comms and we were mid-election campaigning in Southend. And I just said out loud, Nigel's back, Nigel's back. And I got a bit of a funny look from my Tory MP, as if to say, shut up. But I just thought, this is it. It was electric, that feeling. I could suddenly see the route ahead and what was now going to happen to British politics. And I thought, what do I do? What do I do? Anyway, my MP lost her seat, so that kind of freed me in a way, because then I was out of a job as well, and free to do something else. But it still took me a while to kind of prize myself away from the Conservatives. It is a strange feeling when you've been a member of a political party. It does become like a family, and you are committed to the cause. And you have many friends, many colleagues. So it took me a few months after losing my job. I was at home for a while, just sort of taking a bit of a breather and working out what to do next. And it got to just before Christmas time last year, around about this time. And I watched the Reform Party conference in Birmingham that year, and I just sat at home, watched it on YouTube, and I just had this overwhelming urge to be there. I just thought, this is my tribe. These people are the ones that are going to make the difference to this country. But I was still a Tory. I gave it another month, and I thought, well, let's see who gets elected to be leader of the Tory party. Maybe that will be the thing that, you know, galvanises them and makes them realise they have to get back to the right of centre ground. But it didn't really, did it? I mean, we got Kemi, but I don't know what happened to Kemi. She sort of had some sort of lobotomy in between being a firebrand in 2022 and then actually becoming leader in 2024. She decided she needed time to work out what it meant to be a Conservative. And I was just shouting at the radio more and more often, as my poor husband will tell you. He's a very patient man. I just thought, this is ridiculous. Every time I heard Kemi on the radio talking about going back to first principles and taking her time, I was thinking, you haven't got time. Come on. The country is going to the dogs. Now, we all knew that when Labour got elected, it wouldn't take them long to start messing up. But even I'm surprised by just how quickly they're falling apart. Now, I'm laughing because it is funny on one level, but actually it is deadly serious on another level. Because, of course, this is our great country that they are messing up day after day. Nigel at conference last week, Nigel Farage said that he thinks we are heading for a 2027 election. I think he's right. I think it could even be sooner than that. I'd be delighted to hear. Oh, no, Anne's shaking her head. No, it's not going to be 2027.
29.
Oh, 29. OK, well, we'll have a lively Q&A debate on that, I imagine, in a little while. But it is astonishing just how quickly things are going wrong. Now, I wanted to talk to you about how I became a new reformer just before Christmas last year. I finally decided to leave the Tories. I woke up one morning and thought, I can't do this anymore. I think it was after another disastrous PMQs with Kemi just sort of, I don't know, she wasn't even swinging a bat. She was just sort of standing in the corner with her arms folded. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So I left the Tories and joined Reform. That was just before Christmas. I went to my first branch meeting just before Christmas. And then by January, I'd been asked if I would like to stand as a candidate. So I said yes. At that time, we didn't actually know that Kent was even going to get local elections in May because, of course, they're threatening to do LGR, local government reorganisation, to Kent. So it was right up until the wire. I think in April, we finally realised that Kent was being pulled out of the devolution pathway process and we would get our elections. So by the time April came around, I'd been vetted to stand as a candidate. I'd been given a really good seat, Maidstone South East, a place you all know well, Anne, part of Anne's old patch. and I was out campaigning. Then we had our elections on the 1st of May, and I got elected, which was a brilliant moment. I remember standing in the count, watching my ballot papers mount up into piles and thinking, I've done it. I'm a county councillor. This is fantastic. And I was so excited because I thought all these things I can do to help my bit of the community and really show what a reform councillor is willing, to roll up their sleeves and do. Then we were sitting there in the count, and all my fellow reformers were getting elected as well. It was great. And then suddenly my phone flashed up and it said, Reform has won control of Kent County Council. And I thought, hang on a minute, that wasn't in the plan. We weren't supposed to win control of the council. We were promised that we would just win enough seats to form a really robust opposition to hold them to account, hold the Tories to account, because the Tories had controlled Kent for nearly 30 years. So that was the plan, to just win enough. There's 81 seats in Kent County Council. We won 57 out of the 81. So, so that was a bit of a surprise. It was another lightning bolt moment where I thought, crikey. So then we had to elect a group leader, not just a group leader, because of course we had control of the council. So whoever was group leader would be leader of the council. So as soon as we were all elected as councillors, all 57 of us were put in a room together and told we had to elect a leader. So that was interesting. 57 complete strangers from a party some people had only joined literally weeks before, being picked to be a candidate, thinking they might not even win their seat. Suddenly, we're looking at controlling a council and electing a leader. So we were pitched straight into a week-long, very intense leadership sort of election campaign, which was just the weirdest week of my life, because I was on the phone, phoning around these 57 people that I didn't know, saying, well, this is me, this is what I've done, would you consider lending me your vote? Cut a long story short, is that someone's phone? Oh, it's yours. You got it? Well done, well done. I thought I might have to start singing and dancing then for a minute if you couldn't turn it off. So I, as part of my leadership campaign, I thought I've got to pitch a vision of where I will take not just Kent County Council, but what I will do for Reform UK as a whole. Because winning control of Kent was immensely significant to Nigel Farage. Kent is his home county. Obviously he's MP for Clacton, but Kent is where he lives when he's not in Clacton. It meant a lot to him, and Kent is a big county. We've got almost 2 million people in Kent. Kent County Council is the largest county council in the country. I think it's the largest in Europe, somebody told me the other day. Haven't checked that one out myself, but it's possible. It's an important one, it matters. So to become leader, I made a speech telling my fellow councillors that if they elected me, I would make sure that reform in Kent County Council would be the shop window through which the electorate looked to see if they thought they could trust a reform government running the country. That is how high the stakes were at that moment. And I think that persuaded a lot of my fellow councillors to get behind me. So I was elected as leader. And then another weird thing happened. It's just been a series of weird events, really, to get to this point. As soon as I was elected leader, it was about 8 p.m. on a Thursday night in County Hall in Kent. I was whisked upstairs by my new chief executive and my monitoring officer, the general counsel, and they sat me down in my big new office with my big chair and my big desk. I'd never been in there before, didn't even know where the office was of leader of the council. And they started briefing me on things that I had to know about straight away, things that I'd have to make a decision on tomorrow, things that were coming at me next week and the week after that. And I thought, hang on a minute, where's my training? Where's my preparation? Where's my time to work out how to run Kent County Council? There was no time. That was it. I was the leader. I was in charge. What does a leader think about this? What would the leader like to do about that? I can only compare it to someone like the President or the Prime Minister being handed the nuclear codes and told, there you go, Prime Minister, over to you. When you want to press that button, you just let us know. It was a moment of immense clarity. Suddenly, I wasn't just a councillor or wannabe politician. I was leading Kent County Council. And my goodness, I better get myself up to speed very, very quickly. So the first thing that I had to do was pick my cabinet, because Kent runs on a leader leading the executive, which is a cabinet, deputy cabinet, and then members, just like a mini parliament, really. So out of my 56 strangers, I had to interview them all and work out who would be best placed to take on these very important roles of cabinet, deputy cabinet, and all the rest of it. So I had to do that fairly quickly. But the first thing I wanted to do was get the efficiency bit sorted out. As you know, Zia Youssef has done a great job in masterminding the Doge initiative. So what I thought I needed to do in Kent is make a DOLGE. So that's Department of Local Government Efficiency, which is a terrible acronym, and I apologise for that, but it sort of does get the message across quite quickly about what it's there for. So I was very lucky. There were 3 people that really stood out to me as having lots of experience in business, in accounting, in small business and enterprise. So I got them all together and said, would you like to be my DOLGEs? Would you like to head up this brand new position? No one's ever done this before in any council, let alone Kent County Council. But I gave them free rein to go into every single department in the council and look for inefficiencies, look for things that could be done better, and look for ways of getting value for money. Because as we just saw in the clip from Somerset, it's so easy to spend other people's money, isn't it? It's so easy. What's another few £1,000 when it's not actually your hard-earned money? But I don't think like that. I look at the taxpayers' money and I treat it like my own bank account. I want to know money coming in, money going out, and that awkward bit in the middle, you know, projected spend, budgeting, all those normal things that all of us do on a daily and weekly basis to run our households. So that was the mindset that I brought to Kent County Council. So my 3 DOLGEs got cracking straight away. So the first thing we did, and I'm not sure if this was actually all my idea or an idea that came out of a meeting. I will give my colleagues credit, it probably came out of a joint meeting. But I said, why don't we all take a pay cut? That's the first thing we need to do. When do you ever hear of a politician taking a pay cut? Doesn't happen, does it? So I did some quick sums on the back of an envelope and worked out if all council allowances were cut by just 5%, that would give us £200,000 instantly, which could go into our community grant funds. Across all 81 councillor seats, that would give us another £2,500–3,000 each to go straight into our communities. And I thought, what a vote winner. You know, if you've got a village hall that needs repainting or a playground that needs resurfacing and your councillor suddenly says, well, look, I've got a few extra £1,000 because we've all taken a pay cut, we can get that project done. Doesn't that show your councillor is on your side? They're not in it for themselves. So that was the first thing we did. Thank you. And I'm just going to get up my list here because we've made so many savings, I actually need to read them out because there are too many for me to just remember. So £206,000 was put straight into our member grants by us taking a pay cut. We scrapped something called the Crisis Grants Scheme. Now, I'm not even sure what that was for, but that was another £50,000 that wasn't really being spent very well as far as I could see. So we scrapped that. That's another 50 grand back into our coffers. Since we took control of the council, the Kent County Council debt, which was at around about £780 million or something. That sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? I was assured it wasn't that much. It wasn't even that much money. That's what they said to me. It's not even that bad compared to other councils, they said. I was horrified. I thought, that is a lot of money. That debt has to come down. So since we've taken control, because of our policies that we put in place and our absolute refusal to borrow any more money, we've knocked about £20 million off that debt, and that is now saving the taxpayers. It's now saving us about £2,000 a day in interest payments to pay off that debt. Already. And because I was so keen on not borrowing any more money, because I think that the Conservatives have just fallen into a pattern of just borrowing. You know, they wanted to do something, they just borrow, and they'd work out how to pay it back later. And I just said, no, we are in debt. We are spending a lot on interest payments. This is not good value for money for the taxpayer. So we've just stopped that. So as a result, our overall debt is predicted to fall by about another 40 million or more. Now, I say or more because there is very good news to come out about our debt, but I can't tell you, I'm afraid. I would love to give you a scoop, but my deputy leader would kill me because that is his area, and I'm going to leave that for him to announce, hopefully at full council or our next cabinet meeting, because it's going to be a big story. But our debt is going in the right direction, and that is down. So by the end of the financial year, we're going to be in a much better position than we were when we took over. There was also a really quite mad plan to move offices. So we currently occupy a place called Sessions House, which is in County Hall. Lovely, beautiful, old historic building. It's been the home of Kent County Council for many, many years. The Tories had decided, because it's falling down in places, that they would close it and refurbish another building that Kent County Council owned, literally across the street, and move all the staff from there to there. That was going to cost about £15 million. They were going to borrow that. As soon as I heard about that, I thought, well, that doesn't sound great. And we've got LGR coming down the tracks. In 2 years, we might be abolished as Kent County Council. What on earth is the point of spending all that time and money, moving a whole bunch of people from there to there and refurbishing a building when we might not exist? That is not good value for money. So I've scrapped that as well. So we're not moving house, we're not spending 15 million quid. So that's another sum I've avoided adding to the debt. This is quite a good one, you'll like this. So on Thursday this week, we've got our next full council meeting, and this is going to really wind up the Greens and the Lib Dems. We are going to undeclare a climate emergency in Kent. That's right. In 2019, the Conservatives declared a climate emergency. As far as I can tell, it's made not one jot of difference to the overall climate situation in the rest of the world. Whatever Kent does or doesn't do, who cares, basically? It's not making a jot of difference. What it is doing, of course, is driving up our energy bills for our already hard-pressed taxpayers, and it's making everything more expensive. So as soon as we undeclare the climate emergency, that frees us up to do all kinds of exciting things. We've already decided that we are going to save £32 million over the next 4 years by scrapping the renewable energy programme of property modifications. That was all working towards the net zero targets. Can you see how it all ties in now? As soon as you start looking at through a lens of there's a climate emergency, we're all going to die, it leads you to make some really unwise decisions, doesn't it? As soon as you accept that no, there's no climate emergency and we're not all going to die, you can start making more sensible, cost-based saving decisions, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're also going to save a further £7.5 million by 2030 by scrapping the transitioning of all the Kent County Council vehicle fleet to electric vehicles. Again, that was being done to meet net zero targets. It doesn't have to all be done at the same time. You know, we can take a more balanced view now. We can look at our vehicle fleet and decide whether we want to maybe change those ones to electric while we keep these ones on petrol and diesel, and just sort of do it in a much more cost-effective way rather than just scrapping everything and going electric. It just doesn't make sense, does it? So we're not doing that. We're also saving another £1.5 million by bringing our children's homes back into ownership of Kent County Council. That will free us up from being at the mercy of the private market, which screws us over again and again, basically, because obviously it's supply and demand, isn't it? You know, we have a huge problem with children in care in Kent. As long as we're reliant on the private sector, they can charge us sky-high prices and we just have to pay it. So we're spending a bit of money to buy some purpose properties that we're going to make into children's homes so that we can keep looking after the children in our care properly and well, but save the taxpayer money. I've also been working with my chief executive, who, by the way, is lovely. We have a very, very good, robust and honest working relationship. I was warned about the blob. Be careful of the blob, they said. The blob, they're going to make you do things. They're going to brainwash you and bamboozle you. They haven't. They're reasonable people. I think as soon as we came in and they saw that we were reasonable people, we've established a very good, and like I say, it is robust. We do argue. We do tell each other no quite a lot, but we talk it through. And basically, my chief executive knows that she, rises or falls as I rise or fall. So we have resolved to work together, and she gives me very sound advice. They were all terrified when reform got in that I was going to march in and make everybody come back to the office 5 days a week. That was the overriding feeling in Kent County Council. So I had to spend a few days just sort of calming everybody down and saying, no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about productivity before we talk about bums on seats, because I've been a working mum for over 20 years. I get it. For women, flexible working can make a huge difference. However, there's a difference between a bit of flexibility and taking the mickey, as I'm sure you all know. So it's, again, it's a common sense approach. But we are working to get more and more people back into the building in Kent County Council because, of course, after COVID, so many offices were just decimated. They shut whole corridors down, and it's quite difficult to get those corridors back up and offices, you know, fit for purpose and people back in. But we are doing that. I think, again, by the end of the financial year, we'll have 500 more workstations and people in those workstations actually working. So I've talked about saving money. Then I started looking at money that was owed to me in Kent County Council. So I fired off a letter to the Home Secretary. I love firing off letters. It's really therapeutic. So I wrote to the Home Secretary basically saying, look, I've been through the books. In Kent, we have a huge problem with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children because we're the front line of the illegal invaders who come across on the small boats. And occasionally, in amongst all the fighting-age males, you will find a child, a real child, not a 34-year-old who's pretending to be 14. That's a whole different story. I've got to get onto those age verification checks because they are not working. But we ended up in a terrible situation a few years ago because we were being flooded with these unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who, if they really are children, you know, what an awful situation for them to be in. It's appalling. But our children's services were completely overwhelmed a few years ago. So the then Conservative leader of Kent County Council had to take his own government to court to make the Home Office give us money to cover our costs and get something called the National Transfer Scheme up and running so that these poor children didn't end up stuck in Kent. They could be relocated to other places around the country. But I worked out that when these children reach 18, the funding drops off and Kent County Council is still responsible for them. And if they've not been granted leave to remain as proper asylum seekers, they're kind of in limbo and we end up picking up all the bills for their food, accommodation, driving lessons. Probably we have to give them driving lessons because we have to treat them like we treat our own children in care. So I reckon the Home Secretary owes me about £250,000 so far just this year. So I've written to ask for that money back and I will keep on writing until I receive a cheque through the post. We're also looking at other ways of getting money back that we're owed. We've got a bit of a complicated situation with our district and borough councils about on-street parking. I think a bit of a dodgy deal was done a few years ago. That could run into millions of us being owed millions of pounds. But that is difficult because, of course, I don't want to go around bankrupting all my fellow leaders in Kent or their councils. So we're going to have to look at that one a bit carefully. I've also written to the Transport Minister to ask that we get some of the profits from the Dartford crossing. Now, I don't know how many of you might have used the lovely Dartford crossing. It's a tunnel and a bridge. The deal was, when that was paid off, that was meant to be free for everyone to use. Oh no, they paid it off in the mid-90s, I think. But guess what? We're still being charged. And guess what? The tolls have just gone up. And guess how much profit they made in the year 2022 to 23? £87 million. Yes, so I've written to them saying, we'd like a bit of that, please, because all this traffic that goes through my county, you know, to and from the continent, through Kent, up to the rest of the country, it's using our roads and it's wearing them out. All those lorries that come across off the ferries and then use the Dartford crossing, we need some of that money, so I'm going to keep on campaigning. They've said no. They always say no at first, but I just keep going. I think that's why they're calling me that bloody woman. And we're also investigating the possibility of somehow, and this is another one, I'd like to give you a scoop, but I can't really if it's for my environment cabinet member to fix this one. We would like to work out how to charge foreign lorries for using our roads, a sort of environmental freight tax. Because if we can charge those foreign lorries, then we can make a lot of money, and that can go straight into maintaining our highways and roads and make it nicer for all of us. Because, of course, roads are something that we use every single day. Not many people, thank goodness, have to use hospitals or schools. I mean, lots of people use schools every day, but I think roads is one of those things you notice, don't you, when there's a massive pothole that hasn't been fixed. So potholes are really a big focus of ours. I talked about LGR earlier. I just want to come back to that because when I became leader and I was briefed on local government reorganisation, my initial reaction was, what? What a stupid idea. Why would anybody want to carve up Kent into 3, 4 or 5 unitary authorities and not give us a mayor? Because, of course, we weren't on the devolution pathway, but they still want to carve us up into unitaries. Now, I don't know how you feel about it here, because you've got unitaries here in Somerset. I don't hear great things about them. We've got one unitary authority in Kent, and that's Medway. It's a basket case. They're broke. They're in even worse debt than we are. It doesn't run well. So the fact they wanted to get rid of Kent County Council and carve us up into all these little unitaries, I just thought that's just mad. What about the big stuff that Kent County Council currently provides, like adult social care, children's integrated services, schools, highways? How do you suddenly just disaggregate those big core services and split them up into smaller unitaries and give them to people who have never run anything on that scale before? It just struck me as being completely bonkers. So again, I fired off a letter to the Secretary of State. I told you I like writing letters. And said, look, can we just slow down the process? Because they wanted us to have a full business case ready by the end of November. Now, bearing in mind we were a brand new administration in a council, I just thought we cannot do this process justice, apart from I think it's nuts. So I wrote to the minister saying, look, can you just slow the process down so that we have a chance as an administration to get up to speed, to consult our residents to see what they think about it, because no public consultation had been done whatsoever. Again, I think that's fundamentally very undemocratic. So I really object to it in principle. But I got a no back from the Secretary of State, who I'm glad to say that person is no longer the Secretary of State. They were reshuffled out, so we've got someone else in now. So who knows, I might get a result. But Kent County Council has decided if we can't beat them, we're going to have to join them, because if we're not in the process, we just won't get a say at all. But we thought we'd come up with our own plan. So all the other Kent leaders had come up with all these different options for how to carve up Kent. And again, I looked at them, I thought none of them are great, none of them are good. Kent is a very unique county in that it is a sort of peninsular county. We've got about 350 miles of coastline. Of course, we're the gateway to Europe, and we're the gateway from Europe into the rest of the UK. So there's a lot going on. You know, geographically, we're very agricultural. We've got big cities, shopping centres, you know, lots of farmland and vineyards. There's a lot going on in my county that you can't really just sort of neatly carve up without really disadvantaging big parts of it. So where was I going with that? Oh yes, so we've decided to come up with our own plan, which quite cleverly keeps Kent County Council as the strategic authority, and then it divides Kent up into 3 area assemblies. So not unitaries, area assemblies, where they can make decisions on a local basis, but it keeps us as in Kent basically doing the mayor's job and basically carrying on with our key core services that affect, you know, the most vulnerable people in the county. So we put that forward. The other Kent leaders didn't like it, threw it out. So I thought that's fine. Because of our scale in Kent County Council, we are now going to work up our proposal into a proper business case. It's going to look fantastic. The government is going to be put in a very difficult position because they're going to look at our option, and I think it ticks so many boxes. They would be fools. They won't be able to just throw it out. They'll want to, because it's me and we're Reform, and they obviously don't want to give us any more encouragement. But I have a feeling that they're not going to impose LGR on Kent, because if you think about it, when they came up with this plan, it was about this time last year. And of course, Reform weren't doing quite so well in the polls as we are now. But if they divide up Kent into 3, 4 or 5 unitaries, guess who's going to win control of every single unitary? We are. If they give us a mayor, who's going to win that mayoralty? We are. So, you know it's true. So I think at the moment they've got one of me to deal with and 50-odd councillors. Do they really want to replicate me into potentially 3 or 4 unitary heads and a mayor who's got enormous power? You know, mayors are very, very powerful, way more power than I've got. Are they really going to open themselves up to that possibility? I don't think so. Which brings me neatly on to the state of the country now. So what was interesting in a lot of my fellow councillors, and me as well, the reason why we got involved and decided to stand for reform in the local elections, but it's because we felt that if we didn't stand up and do something right now, we would not have a country to pass on to our children and grandchildren. You know, it really was that serious. That was the overriding impetus for us all to put our names forward and put our heads above the parapet. And you'll all know, you know, we heard the call out earlier for candidates. It is scary standing as a political candidate, especially for a party like Reform, especially in the current climate, where we're seeing people like Charlie Kirk getting gunned down for words, because he had a different opinion. Now, I've had this in the chamber at Kent County Council, because I've talked about the link between sexual violence figures going up and illegal migration. There is a link, we know that now. Our women and girls are less safe in this country because migration has rocketed out of control. And we are importing men, and it is a lot of men, from cultures and countries that do not even regard women as second-class citizens. You know, we are lower than, I don't know, the cattle in the field. That is the reality. And we've imported so many. All my councillors were talking very plainly about these figures and about the link and about how women and girls were less safe. They called us racists, they called us bigots, they called us xenophobes. They might have even said Islamophobe. I lost count in the end. It didn't work. We kept talking and we kept putting across our point politely, accurately, clearly, and it got too much for two of them. They stormed out and slammed the door of the chamber behind them, which I think is disgraceful behaviour. That's not how elected officials should behave at all. But I think it just shows it is scary putting yourself out there, but I'd say to anybody who's thinking that they'd like to stand, please do it, because if you don't stand, we're never going to get this country back, and I do feel that time is running out. I think Starmer won't be Prime Minister for very much longer. Will he even last the week? I'm not sure, with the Peter Mandelson debacle hanging over him. Angela Rayner's now gone. She's not gone, but she's on the back benches. What a lot of trouble she can stir up there. I've got Andy Burnham jockeying for position. They're desperate to keep him up in Manchester because they don't want him. But the funny thing is about Andy Burnham, of course, he would have to win a seat as an MP to get a shot at being Prime Minister. If he stands in the seat we think he might try and stand in, guess who's going to win that seat? It's not going to be Andy Burnham, I can tell you that much. It's going to be Reform. So that could really scupper all the people who are now jostling for position. But it's really interesting. I think politics is never dull, but I think at the moment it's a particularly interesting time to be involved. And I would say to you, do it. Stand up, be brave, don't worry about the abuse. We do have to be a bit careful. I do look over my shoulder a little bit more when I'm out in public at the moment, because there are nutters out there. The Tory MP I mentioned that I worked for last year is the one who took over when Sir David Amess was stabbed to death by the Islamist. So, you know, going out campaigning with her, doing surgeries with her, there was security because of what had happened to her predecessor. The political climate is electric out there at the moment, but we cannot be bullied. We must not be cowed. We must not be deterred from doing what we know in our hearts is the right thing to do, and that is standing up, putting yourself up for election. If you don't want to stand, then please do support someone you know who is standing and get out there and campaign. And let's do this. Let's fight together to save this country, because if we can do it in Kent, you can do it in Somerset. Thank you very much. Thank you.